List the countries that have asked for slavery reparations: Barbados, Jamaica, Guyana, Antigua, Barbuda, Bahamas, Belize, Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad, Tobago, Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya. The list goes.
The first thing they do is say to us, you know, we're not going to give you any visa, we're going to cancel your visa. Every time they use it against Jamaica. So I know, I just knew that the way to shut everybody up is to say, if you insist, if you really want it, then you're no longer allowed to come in our country. And because we are greedy to go there, we will just back down.
You don't want to return the stolen artifacts. You don't want to pay reparations. And now you want to deny visas? Let's talk about something that should concern everyone. A resolution led by Ghana at the United Nations is pushing for global discussion surrounding the transatlantic slave trade and reparations. This is something that has been internationally recognized for decades.
We're not talking about random countries here. We're talking about places like Jamaica, Ghana, Nigeria, aka countries with deep historical ties to Britain, and thousands of people coming here every single year to study, to work, and contribute to the economy.
Welcome back to Justly Commentary. If you're new here, thank you for stopping by. This is the place where we react to important stories, explore different perspectives, and have respectful conversations about issues shaping our world. Today, we're discussing a topic that has been gaining attention again across social media, political circles, and international forums. The reparations conversation is getting louder. As Jamaica and several African nations continue raising questions about colonial history and accountability, online discussions have become more intense. Some people believe reparations are long overdue. Others argue that today's governments should not be held financially responsible for actions committed centuries ago. The debate isn't only about money. It is about history. It is about justice. It is about accountability. And it is also about what these conversations could mean for diplomacy and international ships in the future. So today we are breaking it all down. Remember, this video is about understanding different viewpoints and encouraging respectful discussion. Full credit to the original creators. Let's get into it.
You don't want to return the stolen artifacts. You don't want to pay reparations. And now you want to deny visas? Let's talk about something that should concern everyone. A resolution led by Ghana at the United Nations is pushing for global discussion surrounding the transatlantic slave trade and reparations. This is something that has been internationally recognized for decades. But here's where things get extremely disturbing. Reform UK is suggesting denying visas for people who are from countries that are demanding reparations. Let that sink in for a minute. Punishing everyday citizens, not governments, for historical accountability? That's not a resolution. That is literally retaliation. Visa systems are supposed to be about travel, fairness, opportunity, not political punishment. This does not resolve anything, and it doesn't change history. It deepens the division. And if we start weaponizing immigration policy like this, where does it stop? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.
You have said that you want to block visas for nations that ask for slavery reparations.
Yeah.
You're basically saying you won't give visas then to huge swathes of the Caribbean and Africa. Let's just list the countries that have asked for slavery reparations: Barbados, Jamaica, Guyana, Antigua, Barbuda, Bahamas, Belize, Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad, Tobago, Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya. The list goes on. You think that's a feasible and operative plan?
If they
that won't
continue
be
to make,
thwarted by lawfare?
if they can make, well, being thwarted by lawfare. Here's another thing people really need to understand. And I think people watching GB News do understand this. His Majesty's Parliament is sovereign. This notion that, a minister will sit there and a prime minister will sit there and just get overruled by courts. If we pass primary legislation to ensure those things happen, it will happen. You can mark my words on that. And do we again, it
so
was,
you're quite
you look
happy
at the last
blocking
20 years,
people coming from the Caribbean or Africa, say, for instance, if they have relatives here, you're going to say you just can't come because your country, even if you don't personally support it, supports slavery reparations.
I think you're making the exact argument about why there are outrageous demands that people watching this program should pay them reparations.
outrageous to
when it's got
demand
absolutely
slavery
nothing to do with it.
reparations, but people might equally think that it might be
Well,
using
then,
a
if it's
sledgehammer
outrageous, it's
to
about
crack
time
a
Britain.
nut.
Do you not agree, Camilla? It's about time Britain grew a backbone. And what we're saying is, if Nigel Farage is our Prime Minister, we're not going to allow Britain to be slapped around on the world stage. By the way, number one, Keir Starmer abstained outrageously on in the UN vote about this matter. Number two, over the last 20 years, and again, the Tories are in power for the majority of that, those countries you just listed who are demanding reparations, we granted those countries millions of visas and issued them £6 billion, billion with a B in foreign aid. We've had enough of British people being taken advantage of.
Some of the people that come from the Caribbean and Africa have made their lives here and are paying taxes and are embracing British values,
in which case, they are almost certainly British citizens.
Here today to talk to us about Reform UK, talking about banning visas from countries who are demanding reparations from Britain. Now, the problem here is that we are talking about a number of Commonwealth countries in the Caribbean, aren't we? How do you think this is going to go down with His Majesty the King?
Well, we're most concerned about doing the right thing for the British people. Look, there's a racket going on now for years. Countries are lining up, claiming in some cases trillions of pounds in reparations for supposed crimes from centuries ago. Britain was the first major power to abolish the slave trade in 1807 and spent almost 2% of its national income for 60 years enforcing that ban on the high seas, lost thousands of heroic soldiers through sailors through the West Africa Squadron. So what Reform is saying is simple. Any country, if Reform's in government, any country that makes a vexatious demand like this for reparations, which is obviously insulting and outrageous, we're not going to tolerate it anymore and just allow Britain to be slapped around. And British taxpayers will no longer just be an ATM for ethnic grievances from across the world. We will ban visa issuances to nationals of those countries. And over the last 20 years, Tory and Labour governments have issued 3.8 million visas to nationals of those countries and £6.6 billion in aid. That'll go to.
So you did not...
You don't have to. Imagine the government saying, if your country asks us to pay for slavery, we're going to ban you from coming here. Not the politicians, not diplomats. You. Students, nurses, workers. Well, that's actually what's being proposed. So this headline says, Reform UK accused of risking economy with visa threat over reparations. Want to know, Wagwan? Come in, let me tell you, because it'll be unsurprising to you that this is coming from Reform UK, who are currently doing well in the polls, where their Home Affairs spokesperson, Zia Youssef, basically said that if any country demands slavery reparations from the UK, a Reform government would stop issuing visas to their citizens. We're not talking about random countries here. We're talking about places like Jamaica, Ghana, Nigeria, aka countries with deep historical ties to Britain, and thousands of people coming here every single year to study, to work, and contribute to the economy. Okay, let me break this down to you why this is not just wild, but it's also economically dumb. If you look last year alone, Nigeria issued 150,000 plus visas, Ghana 38,000 plus visas. These aren't just numbers, mind you. These are NHS workers. These are students paying international fees. These are skilled migrants filling labour shortages. So what Reform are basically saying is we're going to punish our own economy to make a political point about history. But they're framing it as, you know what, Britain's already did enough. We abolished slavery, didn't we? Cool. But what they don't want to mention is that the UK paid £20 million in 1837, not to the enslaved people, no, but to the enslavers. That's about £2 billion in today's money. And not only that, the descendants of enslaved people were paying taxes that contributed to reparations for the enslavers of their ancestors because they finished paying that bill in 2015. So let's be clear, compensation did happen, just not to the people that were actually enslaved. So what does this all mean? Well, politically, it's just classic culture war stuff. Of course, it's Reform. Economically, they are risking labour shortages, they are risking university funding, as well as strained international relationships. And socially, they're basically saying to entire nations, because your government said something that we don't like, you people are no longer welcome here. And this is where it gets a little bit uncomfortable for certain people, because if you are from certain communities, African, Caribbean, and you're backing policies like this because you think it's economically smart, it's not. It's emotional politics dressed up as economics. because there is nothing economically rational about cutting thousands of workers, students, and taxpayers from your own economy. In case you think this is about reparations, it isn't. It's immigration policy being used as a political weapon again.
So, the UK, the United Kingdom, says it would block visas from countries seeking slavery reparations. Wow, that's crazy. I wonder why is that? Yeah, and they're serious too. Reform UK has proposed denying visas to people from countries calling on Britain to pay reparations for slavery, with Jamaica listed among the country's names. Many of them more, you know what I mean? So I don't see nothing wrong with reparations, you know what I mean? I think everybody that went through something tragic, slavery, same thing the Jews went through, they all should get reparations, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people get reparations for the tragedies and hellish stuff that they have been through. So I don't know why can't the people that been through slavery get reparations, not only from the UK but from every country that was involved, you know what I mean? Anyway, upful, always be grateful in your cupful. Unite melanated people, because as you can see, you might never get reparations, you know what I mean? And the history of slavery is a distorted history also, because a lot of black Europeans was a part of slavery and they were in high positions, kings, nobilities and all that stuff. So I don't know, it's a tricky situation based on the true history about slavery, all right? So let's see how this works out. Reparations for everybody that has been through some form of tragedy and hellish conditions, you know what I mean? But anyway, align with the Almighty God, the true and living God, so we won't have to go back to any more stuff like that, all right, out there.
No UK visas for people coming from countries that demand reparations for slavery. Now that's according to Reform if they get into power. In a recent interview, Zia Yusuf of the Reform Party, who himself is Sri Lankan, but we'll get to that later, said that it was insulting that Britain was being asked for reparation and Britain had already paid its dues. Really? I think it might be time to fact check Zia. So it turns out that when we talk about reparations, they come in 5 different forms. The first one is restitution, then it's compensation, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and the last one is a guarantee of non-repetition. And the British haven't done one single one, not even to say, we're sorry, we apologize. So I don't think the UK's paid its dues at all. And is it insulting to even ask for an apology or for the British to come out and say that they will never repeat these actions again? Also, in case Zia might have missed this one, the UN actually voted last week to say that they recognize the enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. Yes, and the UK hasn't even said sorry. I find it quite ironic that this came from the mouth of a man who is of Sri Lankan descent, considering that the British occupied Sri Lanka, formerly known as Ceylon, for over 150 years, harvesting the land for its rubber and its tea, tearing down all forestry and ruining the agricultural industry of the country. Yes, remember Ceylon tea? Yes, our chai. They stole it. And Zia Yusuf is now a mouthpiece for a radicalized viewpoint that refuses to even say sorry to those whose ancestors were enslaved due to the British. To be fair, what do you expect from a party whose leader is renowned for his racism and recently took on a man who tweeted, "Shoot all the peas"? Yes, this is to be expected of Reform, and this is why we will never allow them to take power in this country.
Have you ever been happy to be right and at the same time sad to be right, but at the same time you're just happy that you were right? I was in a TikTok group with 25 people and we were discussing the gravest crime of all times, which is slavery. It was voted, right? And England did not finalize their part in the situation. America just said no, nay, nada. I believe Argentina and Israel did the same thing. But the conversation we were having was simply about the reparation, you know, the payout. And I said, we're not getting any money. Stop going back and forth about the money. And the Jamaicans there, they were so mad I was in the box. And I said, I was also like, you know what? Where are we even going after the money? And there was this big conversation. No one understood me because I know something. I've been watching politics for a very long time and I knew something was going to happen. So this is what happened. Exactly what I said. I said, listen up, people. Before they gave us a cent, a dollar, what they're going to do is just ban us no more visa. Because they know most Caribbean and most African people are obsessed with England, Canada, America. Obsessed with Europe. They are obsessed with being into these places. And every time they want to eat us, the first thing they do is say to us, you know, we're not going to give you any visa. We're going to cancel your visa. Every time they use it against Jamaica. So I know, I just knew that the way to shut everybody up is to say, if you insist, if you really want it, then you're no longer allowed to come in our country. And because we are greedy to go there, we will just back down. Zia, is that the name of the Pakistani politician guy? That's exactly what he said a few days ago. Yes! I was right! Yes, I was right! You know I'm 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 right! Everybody know I'm right! Yes, I was right! He said, if you insist on getting money from us, then we won't give you guys visas anymore. We will block all of you from entering to our country. I knew it. They weren't going to give us any money. Any money. In fact, Zia, what he said is that 6 billion already been paid out. 6 billion. I never knew 6 billion was paid out. So I am here thinking, if 6 billion was paid out, and if we're going to split that over about 35 countries, hold on, let me calculate. My maths class never get me prepared for this. 171 million and some change would be for each country. Somebody get a calculator and help me fix this. Per each country. Now, how we never heard of Jamaica getting 171 million pounds from England? We never heard of that. But that is what he said. He said 6 billion. Someone calculate, help a sister out. And then, what we have, 2.5 million people on the island? £64 and some cents, right? Somebody help a sister, help a sister, help a sister. I went to maths class, accounting class, but I wasn't prepared for this. So anyway, so £64 and some cent for each Jamaican. Where is my £64? I want my £64. I just pay my tax, my parents' tax, my grandma tax, and a mistake made and I pay for my great grandma tax. I have never even seen my great grandma. So that money would belong to me. That money, that £64 and a couple of cents would belong to me. Which politician got my money? I would like to go and pick it up. Is it the one there now? The one before? Mr. Patterson, I genuinely hope you're not the one who got my money. Anywhere now where I can find Mr. Patterson? That's our former Prime Minister. Maybe he's the one that got my £64. I would greatly appreciate my £64, Mr. Patterson, if you can tell me where to meet you and the time. I'll be there to get my £64. I appreciate it. But I'm telling you, they're not going to give us any money. And because so many of us are so greedy to get their visa, that is what they're going to use and shut down every single country. Jamaica, Trinidad, Ghana, all of us, Kenya, all of us, they're going to shut down all of us with their visa. And I was right. Bye.
So sick and tired of Reform UK and the current policies which they have. The brown-skinned man who has family from Sri Lanka is now saying that Caribbean countries can't get reparations from the UK, and if they ask for reparations, that means that the UK government will block visas from those islands to come to this country. But don't they think about the effect that could have, because the Caribbean islands could then be like, oh, well, we're going to block visas from people who want to come from the UK to go to the Caribbean. So it's going to affect both of them at the end of the day, and I don't understand how he's talking like this when his family literally comes from Sri Lanka. Is absolutely mind-blowing and crazy. And on Good Morning Britain, when they asked him what about Sri Lanka and that their government is also asking the UK for compensation from what the British Empire did to them, and he basically didn't even answer the question. It's just crazy and it's mind-boggling. And I urge people, again, you need to get dual citizenship if you can get a Caribbean passport, because these are the kinds of things which could affect us. And then it means if you get that Caribbean passport, at least you won't have to pay for a visa to go to the Caribbean. Having a British passport isn't all that at the end of the day, but I want to hear all your thoughts in the comment section down below.
Before discussing opinions, it is important to understand what reparation actually mean. Reparations generally refer to efforts to address the lasting effects of historical injustices. These efforts can take many forms. Some people immediately think of financial compensation, but reparation can also include educational investment, healthcare partnerships, infrastructure, development, scholarships, debt relief, official acknowledgements, public apologies, support for cultural preservation. The idea is that some historical actions created economic and social disadvantages whose effects continue today. Supporters argue that addressing those impacts require more than simply recognizing history. Critics, however, often question how responsibility should be assigned across generations and what practical forms and reparation measures should take. Jamaica's history is deeply connected to colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade. For centuries, enslaved Africans were forced to work on plantations under brutal conditions. The wealth generated from that system benefited colonial powers while leaving lasting economic and social consequences in Jamaica. Since gaining independence in 1962, Jamaica has continued developing its economy and institutions. At the same time, conversations about historical injustice have remained part of public life. Many Jamaican leaders and organizations have argued that former colonial powers should acknowledge their role and work toward meaningful forums of reparative justice. For supporters, this is about recognizing historical realities and finding constructive ways to address enduring inequalities. Jamaica is not alone. Several African countries have also renewed calls for conversations about reparations and the legacy of colonialism. Leaders, academics, and advocacy groups have argued that colonial rule extracted resources, disrupted societies, and left long-term developmental challenges. Different countries have proposed different approaches. Some emphasize formal apologies, others focus on investment, partnerships, educational initiatives, or economic cooperation. Not every country shares the same priorities, but many agree that understanding history is important when shaping future relationships. There are several reasons. Why has this issue become more visible recently? There are several reasons. First, social media has made historical discussions more accessible. People are sharing documents, historical records, and personal perspectives that reach millions almost instantly. Second, younger generations are increasingly interested in understanding the long-term effects of historical events. Third, governments and regional organizations continue raising these issues in international discussions, keeping the topic in the public eye. At the same time, online conversations can become very polarized. Some posts encourage thoughtful dialogue, others spread misinformation or oversimply complex historical issues. That makes it especially important to check facts, listen carefully, and avoid assuming that everyone shares the same perspective. One question many people are asking is whether these discussions could influence diplomacy. The answer is that conversation about historical accountability can become part of broader diplomatic relationships, but their impact depends on how governments engage with one another. Many countries continue to cooperate on trade, education, security, tourism, and investment, while also discussing difficult historical topics. Diplomacy often involves balancing honest conversation about the past with shared goals for the future. Public perception can also play a role. How leaders communicate, how media reports on these issues, and how people discuss them online can all influence international relationships. Constructive dialogue is generally more likely to support cooperation than inflammatory rhetoric. One reason this topic remains challenging is that sincere people can hold different views. Some believe reparations are a necessary step toward acknowledging historical injustice and helping address its lasting effects. Others believe the focus should be on present day partnerships, development, and policies rather than compensation for historical events. There are also people who support symbolic actions, such as apologies and educational initiatives, but have questions about financial reparations. Understanding these different viewpoints doesn't require agreeing with all of them. It means recognizing that the conversation is complex and deserves thoughtful discussion rather than personal attacks. History shapes our present, but respectful dialogue can help shape a better future. The reparations debate isn't likely to disappear anytime soon. As Jamaica, several African nations, and other voices continue discussing history and accountability, the world will keep paying attention. Whatever your opinion, conversations like this remind us that history still influences today's politics, economics, and international relationships. The key is to approach these discussions with respect, curiosity, and a willingness to learn from one another. Now, I'd like to hear from you. Do you think these reparations are an important part of addressing historical injustices? If so, what form should they take? And how do you think this conversation could shape relationships between nations in the years ahead? Share your thoughts in the comments below and please keep the discussion respectful. Share your thoughts in the comments below and please keep the discussion respectful. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss future conversations here on Josely Commentary. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.